Hey. So, hello everybody. It is really, really cool to be able to be here at Young Adults and to be able to meet new faces and reconnect with some older faces, not older in age, older in like we've known each other for a while. And it's really good to be here. And I'm really grateful that there is something like this going on, and that actually we're able to gather together as a group of young adults and actually come around worship and just give everything to God and come around the Word. And so, as well as sort of thanking Millie and Ben for inviting me here to preach, I want to thank you guys for pioneering this ministry, because it's so important that this is something for us, and it's unique and it's different. And so this is really, really good. And so be encouraged, guys, that are setting it up. Be encouraged, guys, that are here week in, week out, that this is good and this is just the start of it. And I really believe that, you know, God is in it and God is going to grow it and just make it happen in a bigger way. So, yeah, as Millie said, my name's Hannah and I'm from Arise Church. I'm the youth pastor there. And I came to know God when I was 12 through the youth work, and I got baptised when I was 14. And since then, I've just fallen more and more in love with Jesus and everything that he is and everything that he does every single day. And I can easily say that God has completely transformed my life in an incredible way. And so I am so passionate about talking about God and about sharing about God and about other people being able to love Jesus the same way that I do. And so something that I'm really passionate about is that actually as Christians, we get to live in the fullness of all that God has got for us, because he has got something so amazing for each and every one of us, something so unique, something so personal, something so incredible. And yet I think it can be really easy for us to miss it a little bit, for us to get distracted or lose our focus or lose our way a little bit. And we end up kind of maybe veering off a little bit, and actually, we just want to fulfill the purpose that God has got for us. And so I think it can be really easy for us to treat salvation as like, oh, it's a ticket into heaven. And, you know, my eternity's sorted. That's cool. And so, you know, we'll just live life. We can do whatever we want. That's okay. You know, it doesn't really matter. Or maybe, you know, because of the culture around us, we start to lose focus on God and the fact that we need God, and we start to focus on ourselves and, oh, I can totally do this and I can make this happen and I can make this work. And we end up losing that need for God and that dependence upon God. And it can be really easy to do that, I think. But I really believe that if we really fight to stay focused on everything that God is and everything that God has got for us, what he has got and what we will find ourselves able to do is incredible and something that is so worth the fight of staying focused. And so that's one of the things I want to encourage us in this evening is the fact that God has got something so incredible for us. Whether you've been a Christian for, you know, all of your life, or whether you're new to being a Christian, or you're just kind of on a journey of discovering God, he has got something so incredible for you as an individual. And it's so important that we embrace that and we know what that is for us. And so that's one of the reasons that I love this and what Young Adults is about. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I'm at church, I'm very kind of heavily focused on where I'm serving or where I'm leading. Maybe a lot of us are kind of focused on that as well. And actually, it's been a while maybe since we've been able to go to church and just kind of turn up for ourselves. Maybe actually we're turning up to church and, you know, we're hosting, so we're showing people to their seats, or we're making them tea and coffee, or we're working on the car park, or we're preaching, or we're in the band, and our focus is about serving others, which is great, which is so important. But sometimes it can be like, oh, I just want to go somewhere and I just want to stand in Jesus' presence. I just want to give everything to God. I just want to be with God. And I love that this is something for us to come and to just worship, to not have responsibility for any youth or kids or adults, whoever it is that we might be responsible for at our churches. This is something where we can come. And so tonight, as Millie's kind of already said, I want this to be an opportunity for us to have like our moment with God, and for us to be able to have that kind of that encounter, that breakthrough moment where it's just between us and God. No other responsibilities, no other distractions, nothing else going on, but just what God has got for us. So I'm going to read from the Bible. That's important. And I'm going to read a very, very well-known passage from Matthew. And it's Matthew 14, verses 13 to 21. So let's read it. It says, as soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone. But the crowds heard where he was headed and followed on foot from many towns. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. That evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the village and buy food for themselves. But Jesus said, that isn't necessary. You feed them. But we have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they answered. Bring them here, he said. Then he told the people to sit down on the grass. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up toward heaven and blessed them. Then, breaking the loaves into pieces, he gave the bread to the disciples who distributed it to the people. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterwards the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. About 5,000 men were fed that day, in addition to all the women and the children. Thank you, whoever did that. I love that story because I love the fact that there are just so many different things going on in that story. I love that Jesus kind of wanted to be on his own and have a bit of alone time, which we all need from time to time. And yet everybody heard about it and kind of went, no, I want to be where Jesus is. I just want to be around Jesus. I want to be in his presence. I want to hear his teaching. So they followed him. And Jesus, in all of his grace, had compassion and thought, okay, I'll keep teaching. I'll keep talking. I'll keep doing this thing. And so he ended up speaking to them for hours and hours and hours. I love that the disciples go to him with a problem, like we need to feed these people. And Jesus didn't go, okay, leave it with me, I'll sort it. Jesus went, you sort it. Like, what is that about? I don't know if you've ever gone to God with like a prayer request or maybe like a plan of action. Sometimes I do that. And he goes, well, you sort it. And I just stand there and think, hang on a minute, Jesus. You're the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ, God Almighty. Why am I sorting it? Like, surely you're more able to sort this than I am. But actually, sometimes God puts the responsibility in our hands to see what we do with it. And I love that he does this with the disciples because he wants to see what they're relying on, who they're relying on. What are they going to do when they're faced with a crisis? What are they going to do when they're faced with a problem? And we see from the story that they ask around, who's got food, who's willing to give. And we see, it doesn't say in this part of the scripture, but from studying it and things, we see that a boy gives up some of his food, some of what he has got. And so we know that the disciples are able to make a way for this problem that they've got. But they wouldn't have known that if Jesus hadn't have said, well, you sort it. And I find that so interesting because I don't want to go to God with a prayer request and him say, you do it. But he might do that because he wants to see how we deal with it in a crisis. And the truth is, as much as we'd like to pretend that crisis and struggles and difficulties aren't going to happen in life, they are. That is inevitable. As Christians, we don't get that get out of jail free card, that bypass all the struggles in life. We're going to go through difficult times. It tells us throughout the Bible that we are going to go through those times. But it tells us that when we go through them, God is with us. That the things are not going to overwhelm us because God is with us. That things are not going to destroy us because God is with us. And so we know that we can get through it. However, our response in the struggle is the key. And I think it's our response that is key to the breakthrough. So the title of like what I want to talk about and what I want to pull out of this story is the miracle is in the breaking. So I don't know if anyone here tonight can relate to a feeling of being broken, feeling like something's hit you out of nowhere and you just do not know what to do. You're feeling vulnerable and destroyed and worthless and useless. I reckon we can probably all say, yeah, I've felt like that, or maybe I'm feeling like that right now. Whether that's broken from grief, broken from a relationship breakup, broken from a financial situation or a health concern. So many things go on around us and happen to us that can leave us feeling broken and like we're never again going to be whole. Like never again are we going to be able to do anything of worth, like we are now good for nothing. I'm someone that bites my nails, right? And I work really, really, really hard to try and grow them. And right now they're doing okay. Like these are real, and I'm impressed with that. But the problem that I have when I'm growing my nails is that as soon as one breaks, I want to give up. So like right now I've got a broken nail. It's like really short and just I look at my hand and I'm like, oh, it's horrible. Like, you're broken and disgusting and you've let the team down and this isn't fair. And I look at the broken one and I just think, well, forget it. What's the point? I may as well just break them all. Like, who even cares anymore? And instantly I just get really negative. Instead of seeing like 9 great nails, I see like the broken one, like, ugh. And I just think, do you know what? It's a really silly picture. But actually, do we look at ourselves like that when we're feeling broken? Like, oh, you've let the team down. You're good for nothing. You're useless. You're horrible. We may as well just forget everything because you're broken. Like, actually, do we treat ourselves that horribly when we feel like we're broken? We live in a culture that is so quick to throw things away when they're broken, rather than to work on repairing them, work on fixing them, or maybe find a way to work with the new way of doing things. We just throw them away. And so when we're broken, maybe we feel like, well, someone's just going to throw me away, or I might as well just throw myself away because there's no point. When actually that's not what we're meant to do. That's never how we're meant to be. And so when I look at this story, what encourages me is that the breaking of the bread is what's key. The miracle would never have happened if Jesus hadn't have taken that loaf of bread and broken it. And so actually, sometimes we can pray when we're feeling broken. We can pray for God to take the situation away, but I don't think that's the right prayer. I think we need to pray for God to get us through the situation in a way that shows his glory, that gets us through a situation in a way that brings us out the other end better than we went in. And so my question to you this evening is, in your brokenness, whether that's how you're feeling right now, whether that's how you felt in the past, in your brokenness, what is God doing? Because I fully believe that he is doing something. Fully believe that he is at work. And so when we are broken, that's when we see breakthrough. Because if we're not broken, how can we ever break through? And so I want to talk about how we break through in the midst of brokenness. So the first thing that I think we need to do is that we need to give him our brokenness. As I said, this young boy went to Jesus and he gave him what he had. It wasn't a lot, and the fact is that this little boy could have held on to it and had a really good feast for himself probably, but he decided to take it to Jesus, to put it in his hands and say, here you go, do with that whatever you want, whatever you can. He offered it to Jesus. The truth is that as much as God loves us and as much as God is all-powerful, he's not going to walk into your life and just take stuff. That's not who he is. He waits very patiently and very eagerly for you to come and give him what you've got. So we've got to be willing to give God our brokenness. We've got to be willing to let God into our situation and give him what is going on. When we put things in Jesus' hands, they are safe and they are held tightly. It says in that verse that Jesus took it and he blessed it. He thanked God for that bread. He does not hold on to our stuff lightly. He holds it tightly and treasures it, and he thanks God for it. I think that broken things can become blessed things if we give God the pieces and let him put them back together. I remember a day when I had some really bad news on a Saturday evening, and I was preaching the next Sunday morning, and I sat on my bed just going God, how on earth am I meant to preach in the morning with this going on? It hurts, I'm confused, I'm overwhelmed, I'm rubbish, I'm not good enough, I can't get up in front of all these people. All of these feelings of brokenness and overwhelmingness and all that kind of stuff was going on. And I just remember saying, God, I'm giving this to you because I can't do anything with it, and I'm just going to go there. And I preached on the morning, and it was incredible because I don't remember really what I was preaching on or what I did or anything. It wasn't about me. It was about the fact that through preaching, God moved in the congregation. God broke through. People made decisions to follow Jesus. People made responses. All of these amazing things happened because I just gave it to God and let him do what he can do, rather than focusing on my brokenness and my issues, which really didn't matter. And so I know that the reality is I'm not a very determined person. I've started doing a quiz recently with people, and I don't really care about winning, which really annoys my team. So I'm like just not bothered. I'm not determined to win. I'm not bothered if I don't know the answer. I'm not really bothered about anything. However, I am determined to get everything that God has got for me. I am determined to walk in the purpose of God. I am determined to pursue him in everything. And so I know that that is worth putting all of my determination into, because I want to get everything that God's got for me, and I want other people to get everything that God's got for them as well. And so that's something that I am determined about. In this story, when the boy gives his lunch to Jesus, as I said earlier, like, he could have really easily held on to it. Like, you can't blame him. Like, he went prepared, nobody else did. But actually, this boy, in giving to Jesus what he had, he got to be part of this incredible story. He got to be part of a story where 5,000 plus people were fed, where a miracle happened to thousands and thousands of people. The truth is, if this little boy hadn't have given his lunch to Jesus, Jesus would have found someone else. We sometimes think, don't we, that like, if I don't do it, it's not going to happen. Actually, the truth is, guys, if we don't do it, God will find someone else that's willing to do it. And I know for me, I want to be part of the story where the miracle happens. I want to be part of the story where 5,000 people get impacted by God. I want to be part of the story where amazing things are happening because Jesus is at work. Do you? Yeah. So the second thing I think we need to do is we need to stop looking for the easy fix. I think so often we try and put the pieces back together ourselves, and we sometimes end up making a bigger mess because actually that's not God's plan. The bread, as one loaf, would not really have benefited that many people. It would have got around a few, and that would have been great. But actually, it was only when it was broken and multiplied that it benefited many. I think that we need to change our viewpoint and stop thinking that as a whole, as an altogether person, we are best effective, and understand that in our brokenness, in our messiness, in our chaos, we can be really, really impacting to people. We can have a huge influence over people, even in the midst of our brokenness. In 2 Corinthians 12, verses 9 and 10, it says this: "Each time he said, 'My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of God can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong.'" And so actually, perhaps your story of brokenness can help someone else that's going through a situation similar to yours. Perhaps your story of overcoming something is exactly what somebody else needs to hear. Our brokenness could be the key to somebody else's breakthrough. How incredible is that? Like, not only does God want us to fulfill everything that we've got, so he wants us to be whole, he uses us to make other people whole as well. It's so incredible. Christine Kane says God uses rescued people to rescue people. And I love that, because the truth is we're all rescued. Like, we've all been in a mess. We've all messed up. Things have gone wrong in all of our lives. So we've all been rescued by God. And God uses us to rescue other people, to take them to him and to allow him to work in their life. That is incredible. And so I definitely want to be part of the opportunity for other people to know God and to be healed and restored from their brokenness. Final thing, God never wastes a hurt. So we need to understand that and claim that actually the story shows that there were baskets of bread left over at the end, which makes no sense. There was more left over at the end than they started with. But actually, it tells us that Jesus didn't let any of it get thrown away. He didn't discard any of it. He collected it up, he saved it, and he used it for other things. And so actually, anything in our life that is broken or messed up is not going to go to waste. God uses it. God does not waste it. So we can trust him with our brokenness. We can trust him with our pain and our worries and our fears, because in his hands, they are safe. A lady called Beth Moore said this: "I am better off healed than I ever was unbroken." I'm better off healed than I ever was unbroken. Like, that is a massive statement, isn't it? Because the truth is, not one of us really wants to ever be broken. Not one of us ever really wants to go through the pain that we end up going through. But the truth is that when we give it to God and when we journey it with God, we come out the other end so much better than we went in. And so actually, if we trust God with everything that's going on, then good is going to come out of it. It says in Romans 8:28, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purposes. And so we know that actually if we allow God into our life and if we put him first and allow him to do the mending, then actually we're going to come out the other end so much better than anything that we went in. And that is something that I am so passionate about, because it can be so easy when people face difficult situations for them to turn away from God, for them to blame God, for them to kind of go in the other direction. But actually, if we give it to God and if we believe wholeheartedly that he is good in all things, then actually we're going to come out so much stronger, so much better, so much more equipped, so much more ready for everything that God has got for us than we ever would have if we hadn't have gone through that in the first place. And so a final thing from Christine Kane again. She says, it's in your broken places that you are most often used by God. And I think that that's something incredible, because we, like I said, we don't want to be broken. We don't want to go through that difficult circumstance. But actually, God uses it. God uses it for us and God uses it for other people. And I think that that is something that is really, really key for us and for other people to understand God's goodness and God's glory in all things. So can Millie and Ben come back and lead us in worship? Is that okay? So I just think that this is good to just have a moment. And actually, I don't know whether you're in a place right now where you're feeling broken, where you can relate to some of the things that we've talked about, or maybe something's gone on in the past that you've not really shared with God, or you haven't really journeyed with God, or maybe it's about you using a situation that you've gone through for other people. But I really believe, like when I was preparing this message, I really believe that God wants to speak to people about something specific. And so I've just asked if we can have some time of just worshipping God, just encountering God and allowing him to say something to each of us as individuals and to have that moment with God. So I'm going to hand over to our awesome worship.